Namaste Starlights. As we get started today, I would like to just take a little bit of a breath break. Oftentimes we forget to breathe or we're not breathing properly. So I would love if you took the time to breathe with me today. And we're gonna do 3 deep breaths. So you wanna make sure your stomach is inflating, getting that air throughout your lungs, and just inhale the good stuff, exhale the bad stuff. Thank you, Starlight, for breathing with me. Once again, super important just to check where you're at. Oftentimes we're so automatic, we just forget to breathe sometimes. You may catch yourself kind of having pauses in your breath or having shallow inhaling. So it's good to take a break like that. As always, I'll set an intention for today's video. And what I wanted to talk about today was self-compassion. I often see that self-compassion is hard, and it can be. I see that we often tend to make ourselves the exception to things. And part of that is just the society we live in and, maybe family, friends. But I figured it would be a good topic to talk about today. So let's start off with what is self-compassion. I mean, just by the words alone and boiled down, self-compassion is the act of being compassionate to ourselves. It's similar to things like self-love and self-kindness, but compassion simply means kind of honoring our human experience and allowing ourselves to be human. And that means making mistakes, things getting messy and not looking perfect. It just means giving ourselves grace to be. So, self-compassion is or has been studied primarily by this person named Krista Neff. And throughout Krista Neff's research, what they found was to be 3 major components of self-compassion. So number 1 is self-kindness. Boiled down, self-kindness essentially is looking at how you treat yourself, and are you being kind to yourself? When you make a mistake, are your words gentle and understanding, or are they harsh and critical? I tell people to look at how they examine themselves versus a loved one, like a friend or family member, and compare the 2. Oftentimes we find that we are speaking more kindly and gently to a loved one in distress than we are ourselves. So that is component 1. Component 2 is common humanity. Oftentimes in our suffering and our distress, we can isolate. Whether this is intentional, pulling away and drawing back. I've done that when I've had distressing moments. I pull away from people because I don't want to add more to their plate or just be the cloud on their sunny day type of thing. And I think a lot of us do the same thing. Or we may feel like our situation is unique. Like no one else is going through what I'm going through. No one else can understand. And that's not true. We as spiritual beings having human experiences all operate on the same universal level. And while experiences may be different from other people, there are usually common themes and elements, right? So it's important to remember when we are suffering or are in distress that we truly are not alone. And that can be comforting because it once again helps to cease that isolation or curb it at least and let us know that There are other people who know how I feel. There are other people who understand. And they may or may not be in your inner circle, but at the end of the day, we're never truly alone. We're all connected on a universal level. And so it helps to remember that. And that leaves component number 3, and that is mindfulness. I'm a lover and advocate for mindfulness from a personal and also a mental health and spiritual perspective. I could go on and on about mindfulness and how it's helped me on my journey. Mindfulness, though, in this sense, simply means allowing yourself to sit with your emotions. So sit with is different than sitting in. Sitting with our emotions means allowing ourselves to be with any emotion that may come up, even uncomfortable, but giving ourselves space and compassion to sit with those emotions and work through them. So that's the difference between sitting in. When sitting in an emotion usually is ruminating, like we feel depressed and just we don't make effort to get out of it. Maybe we don't want to. I've also been there, right? Over time, though, learning that sitting in an emotion doesn't really help yourself, nor is it self-compassionate towards yourself. So that's the big difference. So those are the 3 components. And it kind of boils down to, why is there such a struggle with self-compassion? I think as a society, it's almost a double-edged sword, or hypocritical, I suppose is the best word. We live in a society where we're very individualistic, and it's encouraged to put ourselves first, even though that's not necessarily the best way. And at the same time, we're also told to not. So that things like work comes first, or family comes first, or anything else comes first besides taking care of yourself, besides giving yourself compassion. We tend to make ourselves the exception. Everyone else is allowed kindness and courtesy and respect, but we're not. And how painful is that? How painful is it that other people are worthy of that, but we're not? See, Starlight, we're worthy just by being here. And we've been kind of led to believe that we have to do things to earn, such as self-compassion and self-love and self-kindness. But we don't have to. We don't have to do anything besides just be here and just live, right? And it can be hard to accept that when, once again, we may have gotten external feedback from other people that that's not how it is. So it's about beginning to unravel those thought patterns and challenge and repair the damage that has been caused by the foundation of not being worthy of having self-compassion. So things like shame and guilt are pretty strong emotions. Once again, pretty common emotions that we as spiritual beings navigating a human experience share. So what is the opposite of shame? Self-compassion. We often beat ourselves up for things that have happened in the past, things we're not proud of, things that maybe even went against our moral and ethics. And it's important to remember that, what do we get out of harming ourselves with our words? What do we get out of not allowing ourselves kindness? We're just miserable and unhappy, and we stay stuck on that low vibration. And then what happens is that we may attract other cases and incidences that allow for shame. right? Because we haven't done what we needed to do to get to a higher vibration, to attract more and better for ourselves. So then we're just stuck in somewhat of this feedback loop. So what I tell people who are on their self-compassion journey is to first notice and pay attention to how you talk to yourself. Is it gentle and kind? Once again, like to a friend or a family member or someone else you love? Or is it critical and harsh? Are you using explicit words towards yourself? Are you verbally abusing your own self? We can be in an abusive relationship with ourselves. And so examining what are the words you're putting out there, because words are energy, and trying to see if you can reframe it. I tell people to try and go positive if you can, but sometimes it's not always easy. Sometimes it feels inauthentic to go from a completely negative comment to something positive. So I tell people, go in the middle, go neutral, go factual. So if you made a mistake at work, the negative comment would be, well, I screwed up. I always screw up at work. I can't do anything right. I'm a failure. I'm gonna lose my job. That's the inner critic. Positive, or the opposite, would be, well, I made a mistake and it's okay, and I'm not gonna make the mistake again, and I'm not gonna lose my job. And in the moment, it may be unbelievable. And if it's unbelievable, it's not going to click, right? It's not going to feel authentic saying it. So then go neutral instead. Okay, I made a mistake. I'm not fired. I've made mistakes before and things have been okay. So if you can hear the difference, right? While one is more on the spectrum of, or more on the line of negative, and the other is on the line of positive, the neutral comments, once again, just look at things from kind of a gray standpoint. And that can be helpful if you have trouble shifting to positive reframe. And another thing that is super helpful, so it's called a self-compassion break. And it's very useful to do whenever we're in a moment of distress or suffering. So the first step is to actually notice when you're in a moment of distress or suffering. And how do we do that? So pay attention to your body. It always starts with the body. Our body is amazing at what it can do as far as telling us what's happening before our brain may understand. So sometimes for some people, they may have a feeling of their heart racing, or clenched fists or clenched jaw. Maybe shoulders are tense and not relaxed. So pay attention to what happens to you physically when you are distressed, and try and see if you can catch it in the initial first moments. As soon as you are able to do that, then that's when you know to slow down. But you want to pump the brakes and not go full steam ahead on the train of, self-criticism and self-abuse. So once we notice we are suffering, we want to self-soothe. And this can be placing hands on your heart or even on your face, anywhere that feels comfortable. So it is going to give you the same release of chemicals as it would if someone were to hug you. Obviously, it's always nice to get a hug for someone, but it's also important to learn how to give that to ourselves. So I'm going to go through a self-compassion break with you all, and we're going to do it together. So the first thing is to acknowledge the moment of suffering you're going through. And so just placing a hand on your heart and saying, This is a moment of suffering. Suffering is a part of life. May I be kind to myself. This is a moment of suffering. So that's the self-kindness part. Suffering is a part of life. That's the common humanity piece. May I be kind to myself. And that's the mindfulness piece. And just trying to be kind to yourself in the present. So we'll do that one more time. This is a moment of suffering. Suffering is a part of life. May I be kind to myself. And really feel the energy from your hands. Like imagine your hands are radiating with light, starlight, and you're trying to like have that light sink into your body as much as you can. So it's important to do self-compassion break once again as often as you notice that you are in distress. What can also help is keeping a journal if you don't have one already, and taking note of the times you're not compassionate towards yourself and trying to once again reframe it. And just pay attention and notice in which moments that you seem to struggle with self-compassion the most. But I'll repeat again what I said earlier. And that's, Starlight, you don't have to deserve being self-compassionate towards yourself. You don't have to do anything different than what you're doing to deserve it. You just have to be. And I think a lot of us, once again, are stuck in this notion that everyone else can get it besides myself. But how unkind, because you don't deserve that. You deserve as much compassion towards yourself as you give other people, right? And the more we are stuck in our lack of self-compassion, the more we're just going to operate on this low vibration and just not be happy. And you don't deserve that either. So, self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. And remember, Starlight, the opposite of shame is self-compassion. Hug yourself, take yourself out on dates, celebrate yourself, celebrate the little things. Because the truth of the matter is that sometimes it just has to be us. We can't rely on other people to fill in the hole of a lack of self-compassion. We have to give it to ourselves first. So, I look forward to hearing how you are going to begin to start your self-compassion journey. Let me know in the comments how you are going to practice. Once again, are you going to take yourself out for a date? Are you just going to do a self-compassion break? Are you going to keep a journal of the words you say to yourself? How are you going to celebrate yourself this week? So, as always, Starlight, thank you for being here. And as always, I will see you next time. Namaste.